Hello all, it's James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade. Welcome back to my channel, welcome back to my content, and welcome to BitCraft Online. Yes, this is what I've been doing since I've stopped doing all my Let's Plays. I'm not sure how many days ago I did the last video, but in that time period, since I've done my last video, I've thrown in something like 255 hours into this brand new MMORPG sandbox game, and I'm addicted. Very, very, very addicted to this game. This game has pretty much captured the entirety of my attention, and I can't stop playing it. It's a game designed just for me. With that being said, this is not going to be a game for everyone. This is a very grindy game. Almost approaching Worm Online levels of grind. It's not for the faint of heart when it comes to being a grindy game. There's a lot of time standing around in your town just crafting things for excessive periods of time to get anything accomplished. I'm trying to be honest about this game because I know there's a lot of people that this game won't be very good for. But if you're like me, this is a game that you're just not going to be able to stop playing. I have really fallen in love with this game, if you will. I'm gonna stop here and grab these newbie goats. Okay, I'm just walking around the herd because you want to limit the amount of time you have to chase these guys around. So attack them towards the coast. Now, this might not seem like the most interesting gameplay for the year 2000 and what is this, 25? This might seem like very simplistic gameplay, but I'm a person that's happy with simplistic gameplay, especially in an MMORPG. I don't think you have to get all what's the word I'm looking for? Particle effecty. So there's games like Black Desert Online where, you know, all you see is particle effects dancing around the screen as you spam combos and bash buttons till the mobs die. This is not a game that strength is player versus environment. This is a game where you do player versus environment to collect resources you need for the true meat and potatoes of the game, and that is the crafting. This game has incredibly in-depth and well done crafting that well, would make some Korean game players blush at the amount of grind involved in it. But again, if you're familiar with Worm Online, like I am, a longtime veteran of Worm, I can handle the grind. So I've quite fallen for this game. It's chill and it's slow paced. At the same time, it's not chill and not slow paced. I don't know how to describe this. There's a drive to be the first in this type of game. There's a drive to be further ahead progression-wise than other people. That is one of the meat and potatoes of this game, I suppose, is the drive to to be able to do more than the other people around you. I will not lie, that is one of the primary motivators for me playing this game. Yeah, BitCraft Online. This is just me doing some hunting. I can actually pull this straight into my ship because I killed all the bodies right next to it. The UI at times could use with some work. The controls at times could do with some work. This is not a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but what it is for me, it's a fun game. But in order for you to enjoy this type of game, again, I'm warning you, and again, I'm probably going to say this over and over again in this video, you have to be a person that's able to put up with a certain amount of grind. If you are an instant gratification type, this is not going to be the game for you. Not in the slightest. What I'm doing right now, I guess you could deem this a combination of hunting, resource gathering, and exploration. This is maybe some of the most exciting gameplay I could film to put on video. And I know that doesn't... how do I put that? That doesn't sound like it puts the game in a good light, right? Well, that's because the most enjoyable part of this game is probably not something you can film. Standing around at a crafting station, spending, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes to accomplish some crafts, just watching your character have a little animation where he's hitting a bench, that's not exactly YouTube video material. And I will be honest, that is a large chunk of the gameplay here. But it leads to progress, and it leads to accomplishment, and it leads to creating villages and towns and empires and cities. I guess I could show the map. So I'm right now in Region 2. You can zoom in on the map if it will zoom in for me. Get really close in on the map and look around. Some towns. This is a very, very large map, by the way. Some towns, like for instance, we've got Starfell down here, which is a capital. It's the capital of an empire. It's the capital of the Empire of Elysium, which is all of this area here. Some towns don't show up on the furthest zoomed out map. In order to show up on the furthest zoomed out map, like here's my town of Exile Falls, you have to have a town of a certain size. But if you go in further, towns that aren't of that size will start to appear. Like, here's an example. I think Jadeville just appeared and Greenswood just appeared. But if I zoom out, do they vanish? Well, that one did. Jadeville is still there. This area right here is the region that I'm in. This is basically one big server area here. This is Region 2. Over here is Region 1. This is another server area. Over on this side is server 3? And then there's nine servers in total. So there's a server above us, which is 5. That's here. Another server above that, which is 8, and then left and right is 7 and 9 and 4 and 6, kind of like, you know, you would have like a keyboard layout. or number pad, I should say. Well, let's continue to go down the map. Yeah. Let's continue to move around. I've given you a peek at what the map looks like. It's really huge. Tons and tons of exploration to do in this game. It's a good exploration game for those who like to explore. Lots of various interesting different biomes. Some of them can be a bit tough to navigate. Some of them not so much. So I guess this will be kind of like a first look video. I'm honestly doing this because one of my friends asked me to make a video on this because he wants to see what the gameplay is like. I've basically told him I'm not sure if he would like this game. And right now, I'm probably showing off the part of the game he would most enjoy. I'm showing it in its best light for him. This is definitely a game that excels for team-oriented individuals. More people to share the grind definitely allows, you know, a larger group is able to accomplish more quicker. Makes sense, right? But I tend to play more solo-like. That's not to mean I'm playing completely alone. I've got a few people in my town who wanted to join up with me. We're not super organized, but we're coming along pretty nicely, I think. At some point I will make it back to town and show you what I've done. Well, I've actually built 2 towns at this point. I've built a town that's now referred to as Bramble? I originally called it the Rabbit's Den, but there was a little bit of drama. And I willingly left my own town because there were a lot of people in the town that I liked, and a couple of people I was having some problems clashing with. Basically, I was a bit more of a hard charger than they were, and I guess I was just being too overbearing at trying to get stuff accomplished, which I can understand. I'm that type of person. I can get pretty overbearing at times when I'm trying to accomplish goals. So I don't hold it against him too much. But yeah, I essentially got chased out of my town. So my new town, I've named it Exile Falls because, well, I was exiled, and it's built on a waterfall. My current residents, I've been trying to go a little bit easier on them. Though they seem to be actually maybe a better, harder charging group than what I was dealing with in my original town. I'm rapidly gaining or catching up to where I was. So it's like I've done this grind twice now of building a town up to T3. And just as I was about to reach Tier 4, or yeah, with the last town, now I'm over here at the new town working to reach Tier 4 again. So I'm kind of back where I was originally when things left off. So here I am chasing the newbie goat away from the shoreline. This is not exactly the most optimal way of hunting. Do what I say, not as I do. You should push the goats towards the shoreline. This game is basically made up of tiers of resources. Currently, you can look at these saggy birds, and they have a Roman numeral 1, and the newbie goats have a Roman numeral 2. That's because the birds are the tier 1 huntable, and the newbie goats are the tier 2 huntable, and that's pretty much the standard repetition in this game. Is everything comes down to tiers. This tree here is a tier 1 tree, for instance. This is tier 2 mining. And of course you have to have the skills to be able to utilize these different tiered... I'm gonna chase him away again, AI. Okay, let's try to do this right. Turn around. Back the other direction. I'm not a person that likes to run much in games. One could say I'm old in the game, just like I'm old in real life. I'm just fine meandering along at a snail's pace, which some people complain about my videos. They say that I talk too slow. Yeah, you know what? You can watch a different video made by somebody else who talks faster. I don't care. This is my channel, and it's a hobby. That's just the way of life these days. Is you have to have a thick skin to put up with the absolute craziness that exists. Oh, that does bring me to one negative drawback of this game, is the community, which oddly thinks it's fabulous, is made up of tons of you know, the woke millennial activist types that plague some games. This seems to be a particular game where you have a lot of those very... They're almost insufferable. They're really hard to put up with. You could call them woke, you could call them Karens, whatever, but there's a lot in this game, so be warned of that. And the moderation, sadly, it seems like a moderation that's like YouTube, for instance, where, you know, YouTube tends to side with the left, or Twitch, where Twitch tends to side with the left. Well, it seems the moderation team in this game also tends to side with, you guessed it, the left. So, you know, I still use YouTube. I'm enjoying this game, so I'm still going to play this game. It just seems to be a fact of life that I am having to put up with. But someday, I would really like the world to go back to normal. Though, it looks harder and harder like that will ever happen. Currently, this hunting skill is probably the hardest skill in the game to level. Actually, it's not probably. It is the hardest skill in the game to level. Not necessarily because it's a difficult task to accomplish. The task itself is easy enough to do. It's just that you don't get much XP for anything involved in the hunting tasks. And so you pretty much have to spend 2 or 3 times the amount of time involved in hunting tasks than any other profession in this game to get to equal levels. So my hunting is way behind all the rest of my skills. And, well, that's not good, because The hunting is literally it's limiting my progress, and it's limiting the progress of my town, and it's a limitation to those who live in my town that depend on me to provide them with equipment, gear, the like. So I've kind of needed to do this hunting. I currently would like to be able to get my membership better tools, and that's not going to happen until I finally reach the magical skill level of 30 hunting, so that I can make said better tools. Alright, you keep seeing this umbilica flashing up on the screen. That is the Empire mechanic in the game. It's, I don't know how I feel about the Empire mechanic. It's interesting. We'll just say that. There's no PvP involved in Empires, not currently. There's speculation that there might be an opt-in PvP system at some point. Yeah, speculation. Oh, I just walked past a cave, which I guess is something that might be interesting to show about the game. This is a Fairlife cave. Inside of this Fairlife cave, if I was to go into it, you would find a bunch of Fairlight ore to mine. You can find many different caves like this scattered around the world that are filled with various different ore types based off of whatever the cave is called. Fairlife just happens to be the tier 1 ore in the game, so it's not that big of a deal. Honestly, I don't find them in general to be that big of a deal. It's an instance. I don't like to have to zone into an instance. I can find plenty of ore in the real world without having to zone into an instance, so I don't bother with them. A lot of people do really like them because there's a lot of nodes very tightly compacted. Which for some people, I guess that's a min-max type thing. I don't care if my nodes are a little bit spread apart. Like if I was to be mining some pyrolite here, I could just go from here to here to here. Oh, that's actually clay. There's 2 up here. And that would get me more than enough pyrolite to accomplish quite a few tasks. Other people, they like to fill up what would be called like a wagon. So if you noticed, this skiff has these small slots. Small slots take small inventory. Large slots take large cargo inventory. Most of your items are small slots in the game. Things like carcasses of animals are a cargo type thing, and or if you mine it, it's going to be a cargo item, so it would go into here. A wagon is a type of vehicle in the game that allows you to haul more cargo than another vehicle that's in the game called a cart. A cart has more regular inventory space. The wagon has more cargo inventory space. So there's a bit of depth and complexity with things like wagons and ships and stuff to make your game easier. Of course, you have to unlock these things. You don't just automatically get to drive the best ship. You have to raise your sailing skills to unlock various vessels, and you have to pay for the training to sail various vessels, and some of them can be very expensive. Same thing with wagons and carts and the like. When you start the game, you can, part of your newbie mission is to build yourself your first basic cart. So They do start you off with one for free that you don't have to pay for. I'm getting a ways away from my ship here. As you can see, some of this terrain gets pretty cluttered up, difficult to navigate or see through. I don't know why I ever shut that. I tend to just leave it open. You notice there's this little icon there? That's a tracking symbol. That's because I'm currently tracking Tier 1 clay. The last time I needed to track something was Tier 1 clay. So right now, I'm not doing something that really requires me to track resources, but it's an interesting feature I thought I'd point out. You can track resources that you've discovered via pressing the C key, going to the resources here, then selecting, say, a resource. For example, here's olivine sand, and I can hit track and it'll change to tracking that. A lot of players don't know about that feature. So if you happen to be watching this and you're new, just trying to get some tips and tricks, well, there's a tip and trick for you. Not really a lot of tips and tricks. I think I thought that might be a video topic I could do about this game. This is a pretty simple game. Most things are fairly self-explanatory. It just doesn't feel like there's a lot of confusion in this game that would warrant the type of tips and tricks video that I might normally make, which I guess is a good thing, right? If it's pretty self-explanatory and people don't get confused, that's a feather in the game's cap. That bird's kind of far away. I'll skip that one. You can see I'm collecting sailing XP from sailing my ship. The higher XP I get, the better ships I can utilize. This is a skiff, which is your second ship that you can acquire in the game after a raft. The raft is quite a bit slower and can only carry one cargo slot, where this can carry 4 cargo slots. As you notice, I'm stopping at these salt nodes every now and then to mine them. Salt is a nice resource to have for making good food, and good food can be very useful in this game. Currently, my character is hungry, and I'm not currently getting a food buff. Then again, I'm not really doing anything that I necessarily think needs a food buff. So you go through a lot of food in the game, and right now I'm kind of being a cheapskate and trying not to use my food because I'm not really doing anything that's all that intensive. Let me turn off you so you guys can see in here. This is somebody's town. What is this town called? This would be... well, it's not Tier 3 yet, so it's not showing on the big map. But if we zoom in here, it's called Serenity Falls. It's Chianti's Claim. So this is an example of, you know, one of the primary draws of this game is making these towns, right? So in Worm Online, you have a totem. This is Serenity's Farm's totem, if you will. So that's a kind of maybe a common feature between the two games, is they both have totems that signify the center of the city, and that you interact with for various things like upkeep, etc. Alright, I think I'll head back up the river towards my place. And maybe consider ending this video. So I don't think it needs to be very long. I think what you're going to see in this video is, well, it's the game. Aside from, I suppose, attempt to build a couple of items in my town just to demonstrate the crafting, though crafting is a bit time consuming. I could maybe place something lower tier that would go quicker. That's a demonstration. Yeah, that might be a thing. I could do with another bonfire in town, but I don't think bonfires are that hard to make. Yeah, I'll make an extra bonfire, seeing as it's something I think my town could use. Am I going to be able to go past these newbie goats? Yeah, I'm going to go past the newbie goats. I only need one more to fill up that slot, and I'm kind of actually more interested in the lower level leather right now, which brings up another thing that I think might be a strength of this game, as well as what others might call part of the grind, and that's that lower tier resources never really do go out of style. You always tend to have to need lower tier resources as you're progressing up the tier structure. There's a system that basically, you know, when you start off your first tier of upgrades, you obviously use tier 1. In your second tier of upgrades, you use tier 1 and tier 2. In your third tier of upgrades, you use tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, so on and so forth. So the old resources before them are always still valuable. That is a good design. At least in my opinion it is. Okay, so I'm going to open up the skiff storage here. And obviously, we can't sail through land. So I'm doing something. Maybe one would consider it gamey, but I'm dropping the resources out of the skiff, and when the skiff is like this, I can go to it and I can collect the skiff to the vault. I'm going to do so. Put it back into my pocket, if you will. Now that I have a ship in my pocket, I can go over here to this side of the land barrier. I really don't think that there should be a land barrier here, but you know, that's just me. And I will deploy said ship once again. Sadly, this game does not currently have a terraforming feature that allows you to change water. It does have basic terraforming that you can change land, which I guess is better than nothing. Obviously, being able to make some nice flat land is fairly important, but it would definitely help if we could like dig a canal through here so that we wouldn't have to go through this process. Also, bridges could be useful, though I think bridges could also be used as a detriment where they might block ships depending on how they're placed. So there's that. A lot of these rivers are are the major transportation mechanism in the game. I think the skiff combined with rivers is kind of like the game's version of highways. I tend to utilize these riverways, these river passages to get to various different locations all the time. So if there was a bridge that say was going across here, it would, here's another town, it could block my way to pass through here, and that would be no bueno. So if they did ever put bridges into the world, the bridges would either have to not have collision with ships, which is cheesy, but it would be a simple way to do it, I suppose. Or they gotta figure out a way to make the ships have a nice archway to allow the ships to pass under, which would definitely be preferable. Though, who knows if bridges will ever happen. This is an early access game. It's still in development, so there's still a lot of things on the horizon. None of us are really sure about what all of that will be, but it could be some good things. What is this? We seem to have sand that's just floating in the air there. That's pretty weird. You actually don't see a lot of that. That type of stuff it's not all that common in this game. This game tends to... Oh, I don't want to call it bug-free, because it's not bug-free. The game tends to perform well, and those types of things don't seem to be that common. And I just went past a lot of hunting area. Okay, I'm going to go after these newbie goats then. I was planning to get more birds that I passed up on the way here. I got distracted doing this video. So what was I saying? Oh, bugs, yes. You could rename BitCraft Online to Relog Online. The general way you fix every bug in this game is to relog all the way to the desktop and come back. And then whatever problem you had seems to magically go away for a little while until the next time you're having a problem. And there are a few of those. I'm not gonna lie, there's quite a few of those. One could almost call this game Relog Online. It happens so often. But I'm just trying to be fair with this first look. It is early access, so obviously things are going to get better. They're running some sort of crazy network infrastructure that has servers in various different places around the world, so everybody can have good ping, which is pretty unique. I think it's one of the first games of its type that I've seen that type of networking infrastructure done. And it seems to work pretty well. I'm not gonna lie, today, since I've been playing, was like the first time the server went down. And it was only down for a matter of 15 minutes before they got whatever the problem was worked out and brought the server back up. So yeah, for an early access game, this game has got a lot of uptime, which is, you know, a good thing. But again, you are going to run into frequent things that on your end you're going to have to restart your client for. Thankfully, hunting and exploration, things I'm doing right now, are things that are pretty much squared away, seamless. You don't have to relog for hunting very often. I'm trying to think of a bug that might happen that would make you have to relog while you're hunting. I can't think of one right now. Mostly the bugs I have issues with is when I'm attempting to build something, I'll lose access to the building. How would I call it? Blueprint. And I won't be able to access the building to finish building it. So I'll have to reload. After I reload, I can then access it again. I think there's another one where the market, you have to relog to access the market. What's another relog one? I don't know. There's quite a few though. There are quite a few different things you have to completely restart the game for. And on that note, the game starts pretty quickly, so it's not as frustrating as, say, crashing if you're playing something like Rust, where loading up the game takes an eternity, depending on your system and what you're using. But yeah, this game on my potato. Hey, come back here. On my potato. Alright, you want to go that way, do you? Alright, perfect, great. I will get it eventually here if I try hard enough. There it is, got it, okay. There's the example of some of the wonkiness that you'll experience in the game is something like that. And again, early access, I forgive it because I'm really definitely enjoying this game. So something like that I can deal with. I can ignore it. You have different ways of controlling your equipment. There's a WASD that's kind of experimental right now. I would say it's an experimental mode. It doesn't always work very well, especially when you're in a boat. So I'm tending to do the old click the mouse routine. But clicking the mouse routine, you end up clicking on these damn fish, and then your character wants to fish. And so yeah, like I said, the UI has some issues. They could definitely improve on some of the UI stuff. Shoot the goat. Okay, I might be lagging here. I definitely clicked on that goat. My character's definitely not doing anything. I'm just gonna stand still for a bit. Maybe I'm hungry. That might be what's going on. Alright, you wanna shoot the goat now? So I have no idea if there was a little bit of lag going on there or not, but typically when I find that something like that is happening, it's best just to stand still for a few seconds. Otherwise, you know, if you keep spamming an input, trying to do whatever it is you're attempting to do, you tend to end up just crashing the game. So if you just show a little bit of patience and restraint and stand still for a second or two, you can avoid yourself the headache of having to log back in after the game crashes. Again, I never said this game was 100% bug free by any stretch of the imagination. The game is enjoyable. For me. Your mileage may vary depending on the type of person you are. Right here I've got a goat that's fallen on some flowers. So when I click on here, my character is going to want to harvest the flowers. So I'm going to have to do a shift and right click which will allow me to view the dropped items, and I can pick it up that way. So any new players, that's maybe one other type of trick if you're watching this video that you might not have known about. Alright, I'm pretty much back at my town. Let's grab some salt. There, I can see the edge of my town right there. Exile Falls. I'll show you guys why I named it. What I did. This is normally where I would pull up and park, is at what I consider a dock. But I'm going to sail around this little point here to show you the namesake of the town. And that's the waterfalls over here. Here's the back side of town from the waterfall side. I'm gonna sail back around and park. Alright, you know, processing the stuff I just hunted will give you a good idea of what the crafting system's like. It'll show you some of these timers, how the game can be a little grindy. Yeah, let's do that. So I'll pull up right here. Because my hunting station's right there, I can basically leave this stuff right here in the boat, go over to my hunting station, and I can begin to process these. I'm going to start with the birds because they're tier 1s. I'm going to click on the tier 1 icon. It shows that I have 16 birds to process into these resources. I'll just move the slider bar over here. It's going to show that the effort to craft is 800. This is a quick craft compared to many things in the game, and we'll get to doing that. Again, this is a lightning fast craft right here. And we're almost halfway through the lightning fast craft. And yes, this might sound like some dry sarcasm, but I'm just trying to be fair and reasonable. I don't want to portray the game in a light that is different than what you would expect it to be. Okay, and now these birds are going to turn into various tier 1 meats, tier 1 pelts, some rough animal hair. It's great, right? Let's kind of process this stuff before we do the tier 2 stuff. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to throw my rough animal hair into that box. I'm going to come over here Open up my bank, maybe toss in my salt. Where the salt goes. Somehow I picked up a crawdad along the way. That's not really something I need right now. So, often what you do in video games is you dispose of your garbage by dropping it in the ocean or on the ground. It'll eventually disappear. And this game is no exception. There's no trash can. We'll start with cooking the meat. Yeah. Alright, this is tier 1 meat. 1280, you can see the craft will go a bit faster than the last one. You could also do meat experiments, but I already have all of these unlocked, so I don't need to do meat experiments. It's only a tier 1 meat. Anyway, so we're gonna craft it up. $12.80 once again is longer than the last craft we did, but this is still, in the game's grand scheme, a lightning fast craft. A 1280 craft is quite quick compared to much of the crafting in the game. Of course, crafting speeds are dependent upon food that you're eating, gear that you're wearing. I'm currently not wearing the most optimal gear for crafting. I'm wearing metal, which is designed to be armor, which is designed for fighting mobs. If I was wearing, say, cloth gear, I would have slightly faster crafting speeds. Be right back. And then there's also, of course, gear. You have tools. You have lots of tools for lots of different professions. You have lots of gear, and you have lots of tiers of gear. And then you actually have rarities to those tiers of gear. And if you go to craft, say, a tier 2 saw, you have the chance that that tier 2 saw could become uncommon. I think tier 2 chance for uncommon is like 35%. And it's like 65% chance of just being a normal common and 35% of being an uncommon at tier 2. Tier 1 there is no rarity, but you need the tier 1 in order to make the tier 2. It's part of the recipe. And you need the tier 2 in order to make the tier 3, and the tier 3 in order to make the tier 4, so on and so forth, keeps going. And as you keep going up these tiers, you get increased rarity levels. And the rarities get harder and harder and harder. So, like, I think rares are... So uncommon is like a 35% chance, and I believe rares go down to 5% or 10%. I'm not positive about those numbers, but it is quite a ways down. And then the rarities after that, they fall off the floor. And so there's a lot of people in this game that are making tools over and over and over and over and over and over just to try to get the best tool possible. So that's a thing, and that might be something you would enjoy in a game. Some people do. I'm fine to work with whatever tool I made. Others are not. Other people are more meta, I suppose, than I am. No. So I'm looking for the right traveler. So this traveler out here, which is these strange-looking dudes, is a cook. and he tends to often like this tier 1 plain roasted meat. He often has tasks for that. And indeed he does. So I can make a little bit of money off of giving him some of this meat. For the rest of it, I don't need it. So I'm just going to turn it into food waste. All of it. It's gone. And yeah, so now we just spent all that time to cook this stuff so that I can spend this time now to turn it into food waste so that I can then take more time to turn that food waste into fertilizer. Everything in this game takes time. Now, other games, this process right here, this might have been instantaneous. And some people would prefer it that way. I'm not sure how I feel. I'm of the conclusion that if it was instantaneous, the end outcome would be less satisfying. What do I mean by that? Well, the harder you work at something, the more satisfying it feels, right? This is the type of game where you feel some satisfaction with accomplishment. And part of that is because of just the time grind that is involved in doing things. So right now I'm turning that food that I cooked, that I then turned into food waste, now I'm taking that food waste and I'm processing it here at the farming station to turn it into fertilizer. I don't really value the meat for eating. I tend to eat fish. Savory deluxe fish and balls is my food of choice. It's not too hard to make, and it's good food. The meat tends to be more for combat purposes, and well, you do a lot more crafting in the game than you do combat. That's just blatant reality. Alright, I think my fertilizer's back here. Yep, just gonna drop that in there. Okay, now we're gonna need some tannin to process these tier 1 hides. And I've got 10, 20, 32, 20, 30. I'll just take it all. Okay, and then you take the hides. Wait, did I not clean the hides yet? I must not have. Okay. So yeah, I gotta clean all the hides off. Okay, that's gonna take 1600 effort, which is a little bit longer yet than some of the last things we did. And that's to be expected. This is tier 2 animals instead. No, what am I talking about? This is still the tier 1 pelts. But I suppose doing leather working is more difficult than cutting up the carcasses. So it's a little more time consuming. Granted, in real life, skinning and caping a deer doesn't take that much effort. Sure, there would be some time involved in setting said cape and such, but as far as work is concerned, the actual processing of the carcass, taking that meat and boning it down to the steaks that you want, would definitely be the more labor-intensive process of processing an animal. But that's just my general ramblings thinking about this from a real-life point of view. So I bet a large number of you, if you see this video, are going to be like, there's no way I could play this. And I accept that reality. I accept that there's a large number of people that can't deal with crafting times like this. They would go nuts. They would pull their hair out and be like, no, man. This isn't fun. Who wants to sit here and wait for something to craft like this? Me, personally, I don't mind it. As you can see, my energy is depleting as I'm crafting. So far, these crafts that I've done, I've been able to do within 1 energy bar because they've been easier crafts that don't take as much work. But you'll oftentimes have crafts where you will run out of energy far before you accomplish what you're doing. Like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times over. Alright, this is a tanning tub. What's going to happen here is I stuck that in here, and now there's a 5-minute timer. So this is like a passive crafting station that is going to do the job on its own. What's going on here? Project limit. Do I have something in the tub already? I do. Okay. Well, that happens a lot. You sometimes forget that you stuck stuff into one of the passive pieces of equipment. Like here, there's something to claim as well. Alright, and then this final little bit, I'm gonna have to wait because I only have 3 tanning tubs here to work with. If I had a 4th, I'd be able to do it, but I don't have a 4th right now. Yeah, just is what it is. These crafting stations take a fair amount of resources, and they take a fair amount of time to build. They're not. Nothing is quick in this game. Everything is time intensive. Like right now, I'm turning those pelts that I just pulled off of here, which were some tier 2 pelts. I'm turning them into leather, and that's 2,600 effort, which is about twice the amount of effort of anything I've done so far in this video. I think I've done an 800, 1,200, maybe a 13 or 1,400, but this 2,600 is pretty much twice the amount of effort. And then I still have all of the tier 2 animals back in the ship to process. But yeah, everything you see here, pretty much built by my own 2 hands. I've had a little bit of help, but by and large I've done the large lion's share of building up this small town. And like I said, this is the second town now that I've built in the game since I started playing. I don't want to say it was that many days ago. If you look at the last time I did a video, you can probably figure out how long I've been totally wrapped up with this game from about that point till now. Anyway, yeah, I think you've seen a fair slice of the game. Probably enough of a slice of the game that you get the gist, you get the idea of what the game's about, how it plays, etc. And maybe this can help you, the discerning viewer who's looking at some YouTube videos about BitCraft Online, make an informed decision on whether or not this is your cup of tea. I'm James Johnson, aka Softwareblade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, please smash that like button, consider subscribing, and until the next time, all peace.